Another round of protests rocked Hong Kong last weekend, with several demonstrations taking place across the city. The protests, which authorities had banned, erupted into sporadic violence at times as police and protesters clashed for a 13th weekend. Demonstrators stormed government and legislative offices, threw petrol bombs at police, and set fire to multiple locations, including the police headquarters. On Sunday, protesters also blocked transport links to the city's international airport. As the chaos continues, is there a way out? I'm now pleased to be joined from Hong Kong by Thomas Chong, a deputy from Hong Kong for the National People's Congress. In the studio by Mr. Qinduo, a senior fellow again from the Pangoal Institution, and also via Skype from Hangzhou by Mr. Victor Gao, Vice President of Center for China and Globalization. Thank you for joining us. Now, let me start with Thomas first. In a press conference on Monday, Hong Kong police said that the city experienced another catastrophic situation over the weekend because of the street clashes and the travel disruptions. 159 people were arrested. Many rioters vandalized public property, set fires, and hurled at least 100 petrol bombs. How severe is the situation right now? Are the streets in Hong Kong out of control, and what was it like for you?
Well, I have to say that, those rioters, they are trying to break all the laws and, to upset Hong Kong orders, public orders. And to us, there are very little that we can do, seemingly. But somehow I think the government, as you can tell, the government and also the police force, they are starting to, start a lot more arrest, over last week. And then I think a lot more, arrests will be on the way. I think the only way out, for us at this very moment is to support, the police, to make sure that, they have the morale, up and holding. That's our only hope right at this very moment. To me, I've been advising, the government to put on the emergency regulation ordinance, which is like, a law, for the Chief Executive in Council, together if the Executive Council, they can, make some new law during this kind of emergency situation. And I think the government is about to make use of that power.
Right. What is the way out? How do we end the violence there in Hong Kong? I think that is the big question on everybody's mind. And Mr. Xu, let me also bring in Mr. Xu's perspective on this. We also want to look at how things developed to this stage. After starting as peaceful march in June, the protests have gradually escalated into violence. And after a brief period of calm, actually, around mid-August, civil unrest again returned to the streets. Why has Hong Kong descended into violence again? What are the reasons behind these escalations?
Well, I think if you follow the protesters' line, basically, there are 5 demands have not been met by the Hong Kong government. For example, they are asking for the complete withdrawal of the extradition bill, resignation of Carrie Lam, the chief executive, and also the investigation committee into the so-called police brutality, and also the forgiveness of those rioters being arrested or detained by the police. Basically, they are asking for amnesty for their law-breaking behavior, and also the punishment for the police force, and also resignation of the government. I think it's more like, as I said, spoil the kids. If you don't meet my demands, I will continue to kick and scream and continue to cry. So that's what's been happening in Hong Kong.
And Mr. Gao, your thoughts on this? Do you think the protesters are attempting to use maximum pressures to force the SAR government to accept their so-called 5 demands? Some of them Mr. Xu just mentioned, such as set up an independent inquiry to the protests, waive charges against those arrested. I mean, is it justifiable to achieve the ultimate goal by breaking the laws?
Well, first of all, I think the violence and the breaking of rule of law in Hong Kong is well meditated, premeditated, and well planned. So it is not a spontaneous and individual acts, for example. It is well planned, well organized, well funded, and even though they claim that there is no leader for the movement, there are leaders behind the scene, and the forces may be a local beyond the borders of Hong Kong. So we need to really see the true nature of this. Now, it is very clear that the real ultimate motive for this rebellion or for this violence is to challenge the Hong Kong SAR government, to bring about the downfall of a Hong Kong SAR government, and also it is a direct challenge to the one country, two system principle, and in its turn it's a direct challenge to the basic law. So I don't think any of these demands can be realized, and the Hong Kong SAR government has to stand firm and rely on the complete trust from the central government in Beijing, and also on the discipline and the effectiveness of the Hong Kong police. And they have to make a point. They have a job to do. That is to defend Hong Kong against such violence and aggression, and also to maintain rule of law and do their best to bring law and order back to Hong Kong. So I think this is the challenge right now we are faced with, and the situation in Hong Kong is fast reaching a tipping point. Something needs to be done by the Hong Kong SAR government to make sure that law and order is restored, and the people in Hong Kong no longer need to worry about going to work or going back home or going to play with their family, for example. And people in Hong Kong no longer need to worry about the cancellation of hundreds of flights and the grounding of the flights, and also the storming of the airport, for example. These acts of violence are not tolerated in Hong Kong, and they should not be tolerated by the Hong Kong SAR government or by the central government of China.
And having said that, Thomas, the Hong Kong SAR government appealed once again to members of the public to reject violence and public disorder. But how much support does the movement have there in Hong Kong, from your observation?
Well, I think that, those people, the rioters, out there, I think the maximum support, among the general public will be somewhere around maybe 1 million plus, or less than, for sure less than 2 million. To me, that's the most, that they can secure. And among those 1 to 2 million people, I think around 1% of them are those people who are using violence instead of, peaceful protest or demonstration. And the majority people here in Hong Kong, actually, we condemn them. The problem right now is, I think those majority, have to voice out, and then have to, somehow condemn those people, and then to give the support and to our government and to the police force. At the same time, the government would have to exercise their power to arrest, those rioters, and to make sure, in particular the leaders, they said they don't have leaders, but actually they are for sure their leaders behind. They're well-funded, well-organized, well-funded. They got a very good strategy behind, and they're well-equipped. Okay, and to me, I guess the only way to do is to make a massive arrest, on those people who are behind the whole plot. And somehow, as the other guest just mentioned, the objective, of the whole saga is to turn down, the government. They want to just demonstrate to the world that one country, two system doesn't work. As a matter of fact, the number of people doing the riot, there are a lot of people, but they are still a very small majority. I mean, a minority of the whole population. As I mentioned, I think every time they have somewhere around 10,000 to 20,000 people, which are a lot already as compared to what is happening in Paris. But somehow, what they are doing, they are trying to blockade the airport. They try to make everyone feel uncomfortable. They are attacking, like different MTR stations on the street as well, and then attract, international coverage. We, as a normal citizen, we really hate all this, happening, because they don't represent us. They saying that, they do this out of their hope or their wish, for democracy and freedom, but actually they are kind of jeopardizing our freedom, all the way. And so right now they're, and then
deal with
the problem right now is
right, to deal with this level of disruptions and violence, the police force, they are being put in a very difficult situation, isn't it? Mr. Xu, protesters threw petrol bombs, Molotov cocktails at police headquarters. These are deadly weapons. They attacked police officers with corrosive liquid and bricks. Some of the police officers got attacked and stabbed multiple times while off duty. Some are dissatisfied that the police has shown too much restraint, while others have criticized them of using excessive force. I mean, how do you view this dilemma faced by Hong Kong police?
Well, I agree with the prior group of people. I think there's too much restraint. Remember, I know in the media there are praises for the police to exercise restraint, high degree of restraint. But look, the police force is not a charity organization. We don't expect you to play to show high degree of restraint. It's about fulfilling your job. It's to restore the law and order, to protect the public interest, to protect the interests of the people, the order of the society, the normal operation of the international airport, normal operation of MTR. So people can go to work, people can have a normal life, instead of being disrupted by those rioters, by those extremists and mobsters over there. So I think you should do your job instead of showing restraint. So I would encourage the Hong Kong police to do more to focus more on finishing their job, through whatever legal means, instead of showing restraint and let the lawlessness and let the chaos continue endlessly.
And Mr. Gao, your final take on this. What is the way out here for Hong Kong? How do we end the violence here?
I think the situation in Hong Kong is faster reaching a tipping point. I'm afraid that the Hong Kong government may need to declare emergency and resort to extraordinary measures to bring law and order back to Hong Kong. Now, there will be bad consequences of doing that, but I think we need to choose between evils, and when you have two competing evils, you need to choose the lesser evil. And I think the goal should be to defend the rule of law, to bring back law and order to Hong Kong, to defend the basic law, and to defend the one country, two system principle.
All right, that's all the time we have for this edition of Point. Thomas, I'm sorry I didn't have the time to get to you, but thank you so much for sharing your analysis and perspective.
I can't agree more, yeah.
Thank you. That is all for this edition of Point. Thank you for your watching and your company. I'll see you next time.